This is John from Polymath Producer, and today we're doing a music production analysis of the song 24 Karat Magic by Bruno Mars. And this is a great track to analyze music production and especially original sound, because Bruno Mars is one of those artists who draws from multiple different genres and has the ability to cross-pollinate those genres into one sound, his sound. And in this track, you will see that happening. So in this particular track, he draws from, genres like funk, R&B, hip hop, old school Motown, disco. You can see all these influences taking place, but they're all fused together to create a unique sound to him. Now, to do that yourself, you really need to understand the fundamental building blocks of how tracks are created. And then when you look at genres, all you really see is genre-specific techniques that are built off of the fundamentals, because genres are defined after the fact. Genres are usually defined after the fact. The sound is created first, then someone puts a label on it. Okay, so the way that new genres are usually made as well is by cross-pollinating multiple genres and fusing them together. That's usually how it works. You can look back at the history of recorded music and you can see this taking place. Every time there's been a big advance in music, it's because multiple genres have been fused together as one. Bruno Mars, excellent example of this taking place. Before we get on with the analysis, I want to tell you that spots have opened for the Polymath Producer system. Okay, this is a 6-week transformational process, and in here we actually get you thinking like a master yourself intuitively. So any idea you have in your head, you can get onto the DAW with ease. And we achieve that by learning how to read songs like a book. And when you learn how to read songs like a book with the methods that I show you and understanding the fundamentals the way I show you, then you can start to cross-pollinate sounds exactly like people like Bruno Mars do, because you'll understand the building blocks as if they're Lego building blocks and you just piece them together with ease. So if this interests you, I highly recommend going to polymathproducer.com, checking out the video called Read Songs Like a Book, and then booking a call with me, a free call where I take you through your goals, where you want to head with your music, what you're struggling with, and ultimately how the Polymath Producer system will be able to help you in your specific situation. So the first thing I want to start with this track is the core harmonic rhythmic driver. So we want to understand what is driving this track rhythmically. What's the main thing driving this track rhythmically? Because there's usually just one core rhythm in the track, like the one rhythm where everything is kind of gravitating towards, and then anything that isn't that is a counter rhythm. So in this particular track, the core rhythm is a combination of things. I'll start with the guitar. So this is taking place in the chorus. So have a listen to it with the chorus. What this is, I believe, from what I gather, it is two guitars that are layered. So it's one that's playing higher chords and one that's playing lower chords. I'm pretty sure that's it. And the reason why they do that is just to really create a higher frequency range with the guitar. It's also two chords getting played simultaneously, so one that's higher, one that's lower, and they're kind of getting mixed. And it's playing the core harmonic rhythmic driver. So it's basically just the main rhythm of the track. So with the drum beat. And I've seen a video with Bruno Mars creating this track with his team, and you can actually see them experimenting with the core harmonic rhythmic driver and what it's going to be. I can't remember where I saw that video, but you can actually watch it on YouTube, I'm pretty sure, where they're working out the synth line and the core harmonic rhythmic driver, and they're experimenting with different ways of doing it in the track. That's very interesting to know, is that these guys at that top level are understanding this core harmonic rhythmic driver and they're really trying to nail it. Like they're spending a lot of time around this core harmonic rhythmic driver to get it right so that it really pops. That's basically it. So you've got the guitar doing that, and it's mostly in the choruses, that one. And this is really cool. So they've actually doubled the core harmonic rhythmic driver with background vocals. Have a listen to this. So I'm pretty sure it's 2-part harmony. Now, as you can see here, he's drawing from multiple influences already. You've got this kind of old school Motown doo-wop vibe in the vocals with the 2-part harmony doing da-da. It's very 50s, 60s style. As you can recall, his original album was called Doo-Wops and Hooligans, so he's obviously influenced by that a lot, and he's put that in this track. And then doubled with the guitar, it's the same rhythm. Now they're playing different notes, but it's the same rhythm and they're outlining the chords, which is really cool. And the third core harmonic rhythmic driver instrument is the main synth line. This is what it is. Really notice just the main synth that's kind of in the mid-range, because the core harmonic rhythmic driver is usually in the mid-level frequency spectrum, and then other things are laid on top of it. So the synth really plays the core harmonic rhythmic driver in the most foreground. Background vocals and the guitar are more in the background. So foreground, background principle, which one's in the front, which one's more behind. They've put the synth really in the front, and the guitars are more just supporting that and doubling that, and the vocals are just supporting that and doubling that as well. The guitar and background vocals are more secondary hooks or hidden hooks, and the synth is more of a secondary hook, like more in the foreground. Now, this synth line, there's a few kind of cool things that they've done with it to make it a bit more edgy, flow with the beat a bit more, groove a bit more, have a bit more life, a bit more, make it sound a bit more professional. Have a listen to what they've done with it. So right there, forget about the arpeggio thing on the top. I'll talk about that in a second, but the main chords, you can hear just before it starts again, there's a reverse version of that same chord right here. Reverse. Into it. Reverse, into it. Right there, like that. It's a bit of a slide up the keyboard. That really just adds some like stylistic edge to it, makes it a bit different. If they just kept doing the chords, it may have not been the same. Just adding those little humanized touches can really add texture, can add character to your arrangement. Again, they've done those mini slides. The reason why they've got the reverse is to add to the groove. Because with all the other instruments, what y'all trying to do? Right there, it went like that. There's a bit of space there. So they've just sort of added in there, very subtle. But these are the type of things that these world-class producers do, is that they add these very subtle elements just to ease into the groove. Now the last part of the core rhythm is the bass, and obviously the kick and snare and claps. But let's have a listen to the bass. So straight away, there's a lot of stylistic things that they've done with it. It's obviously done on a synth keyboard bass, and they've used a lot of stylistic things like the modulation wheel, the pitch bend wheel, all that stuff. So they've used a lot of that for the stylistic humanized elements. With the other elements of the core rhythm, you can notice it flows with it. So the bass is actually doing more than the core harmonic rhythmic driver. So the bass is actually outlining the core rhythm, and the core harmonic rhythmic driver is really accenting the main bits of that core rhythm. And the bass has a lot of passing notes in between and a lot of movement that the core harmonic rhythmic driver doesn't actually have. A lot of the time, the core harmonic rhythmic driver or the core rhythm actually does not as much as the other. So if you remember the blurred lines analysis we did with Pharrell last week, the core harmonic rhythmic driver actually did a bit more than the core rhythm of the bass, but they fuse together as one when the bass comes in. This one is the opposite example of that. So the bass is actually doing more, and the core harmonic rhythmic driver is doing less, and that's the one that's accenting the main core rhythm aspects. So you can kind of play around with it and do what you want with it. I think the key principle to understand is that when you're doing tracks, especially ones like this with a lot of funk and dancey, to create that space, whether that's in the bass or the core harmonic rhythmic driver, like the contrast works really well. Like the contrast can work best, although that's debatable as well, because from the Lady Gaga one we did the other week, their core harmonic rhythmic driver and bass, I believe, just fused together as one. So there's multiple ways you can really do it. Now with the kick and snare, if you notice there as well in the bass, when it goes like that, that's when the synths go like that, so they slide up, so they're fusing together as one, which is very cool. So that's really just congruency. It's just flowing as one entity, the interdependent principle. I'll show you a few other things about these two instruments as well before we move on to the percussion. But the bass actually changes a little bit in the pre-chorus. So in the pre-chorus, it becomes more of a low-end sustained bass rather than the funky kind of one. But they fuse the funky one on top, which you just heard there, with a little bit of a fill, and then that comes in the second half of the pre-chorus. That's what's happening in the pre-chorus.
So many pretty girls around me and they're waking up the rocket. Keep up!
So this is a similar technique that we saw Ian Kirkpatrick use the other week, where he used a different bass for different feel in the track. So for the funk sections, he was using a funk bass similar to this one. But then when the pre-chorus started, he pulled it back and used a sustained bass that was more atmospheric. And they've used the exact same technique in this track. So as you can notice though, about halfway through, they add the funk bass in just for like a little bit of a top bass variation. But other than that, they've got that bass sustaining underneath. So I wanted to point that out, that they've used the same technique. When it comes to the synths as well, this little arpeggio thing that happens on the top is really a fill that happens in between the vocal line. So this one here. It's an arpeggiated fill. And if you listen to the vocals, the lead vocal at the same time.
Put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do?
Can you notice how it happens in between the vocal phrases? They probably recorded the vocals, they had the arrangement and stuff, but then they noticed that there was a bit of space in between the vocal, and they were like, okay, what can we put to fill in that space? And then they landed on an arpeggiated high-end synth sound. So in the pre-chorus, they've just got a sustained pad style synth that gets filtered up as it's happening. So they're using a filter to start at the start of the pre-chorus low, cutting off the high end, and then they're slowly revealing the high end, and that's just building the intensity as it's happening. And the same thing is happening with the bass as well. In the bridge, they use another arpeggiated synth at the top, and it's kind of tremoloed from side to side, from left to right. And they've changed the rhythm a bit in this section. This is kind of like the breakdown bridge section. I'll play it with the rest of the instruments so you can know what I'm talking about.
What's that sound? Come on now.
So this is kind of like just a mini breakdown section where the core rhythm changes a bit and everything kind of changes. Even the instrumentation changes, like the snare hits, the hi-hat hits, the claps, they actually change. And I'll show you later on when we look at the percussion, the actual sounds of the instruments are changing, the samples and everything. Now this synth effect happens in the pre-chorus, and this is like a bunch of rises happening at the same time. Have a listen. It's like they've just laid multiple rises. And they have them starting at different octaves and stuff like that, like ending at different times, and they're just kind of going do 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 like that. There's many ways you can kind of create these, but the principle behind it is that they're doing it on the section where they want the build before the chorus happens again. So have a listen to it with the synth that's getting filtered out as well. So the synths are getting filtered out, the pads, the bass is sustained. There's all this tension happening. Prolonged chords, all starting to get revealed. A lot of tension building. Back into the thing. It just really builds up that intensity, and then it goes right back into the chorus again. Like so much suspense built. And that was really just from doing those three elements, like the bass getting filtered off, the synth pads getting filtered off, and the rises, the really strategic rises, which really work well. All right, let's talk about the percussion here. Kick. So the kick is pretty consistent throughout the whole track, very similar pattern and very similar intensity of sound. Like it doesn't really change intensity. As you can notice, it's just really the same intensity. The only time that the kick changes is in the bridge / breakdown part, and they actually change the sample. So have a listen to this. It almost sounds like a totally different kick. And that's in the breakdown, like bridge section. So for whatever reason, they've changed the instruments there.
What's that sound?
It almost sounds like it's hitting like more of a high end range as well. Whereas in these sections, it kind of just feels more punchy down the low end. Now the claps, they've used a very common modern technique that we've covered in a lot of other videos, where the claps play on the 2 and 4, but they actually get layered differently on certain hits to emphasize those certain hits. And they achieve that via either extra layers of claps or extra layers of claps that are reverbed in different ways. So at the entrance hit, they've got this clap here. And then it goes normal. But then there's a prolonged effects one there. So let's break down what they've done there. On that entrance hit, this is where it's just about to hit into the chorus. And it's that entrance hit. So I'll single it out just before it's about to happen. What this hit is basically a clap, a snare, and a kick at the same time, I'm pretty sure. And it's really one of the snare hits is very reverbed, so it prolongs over, and they've layered a bunch of different sounds to make this entrance hit, and it happens just before the chorus starts. And I thought it was a really cool technique to use, and they've actually got that happening before every chorus, which is awesome. And the clap remains pretty consistent on the 2 and 4. Sounds like multiple claps, probably layered as one. Right there. So on this particular one, they've got an extra reverb clap behind it that prolongs. And on that particular section,
24 karat magic in the air.
It's interesting to note that they've actually got that clap with the extra reverb on the punch line of the song. So 24 karat magic in the air, that's when it happens. So they've reserved it for that moment only. In the pre-chorus, they've also got a different type of clap as well. And that includes this one here on the 4, I think, or the 2. Yeah, that's on the 4. So it's playing every second bar. Just that extra hit, just to emphasize it. Have a listen with the rest of the arrangement.
I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up.
Okay, so it's happening in between vocal phrases. That's kind of why it's working so well.
I'm a dangerous man with some money in my pocket. Keep up. So many pretty girls around.
Now the claps stay pretty consistent, and then in the bridge they change. So here it's really just kind of a reverb clap.
Come on now.
And that's really just adding that like spray sound behind the snare hit.
Don't fight the feeling, invite the feeling, just put your
entrance hit. That entrance hit works so well. The snare stays pretty consistent throughout the entire track. And it's mostly the same intensity. The only time it changes intensity is during the breakdown again, where it almost sounds like a different snare. Now it's mostly the 2 and 4, but there's a very subtle turnaround in the mid of the chorus. Just there.
24 karat magic in the air.
So it's like doom, like that. So that's pretty straightforward. The snares and claps layer each other and it creates just that very dancey vibe. All right, let's move on to the percussion. So that's the chorus, the first chorus. To begin with, they have a vinyl scratch sound, starting higher then going lower. And it's just before that massive clap entrance that happens. Plus a bass slide that doubles with that clap hit. And with that initial hit of the chorus, they've got a crash combined with like a bit of a novel percussive hit in a very subtle way. It's like ding, like that. Moves into a closed hat section where it kind of sounds like a real closed hat. So they've used like more of a organic sounding hi-hat section here where the closed hat's going like that. And then they've got an open hat that happens midway through. And I want to note that the hi-hat actually prolongs with the bass. So it actually flows with the bass. So it goes right when the bass is so it goes. Again, interdependence principle, principle number 10. The instruments are flowing as one entity. So when you're doing percussion, high-end percussion like this, really think like, how can it flow as one entity? Even the scratch at the start is like an effects thing, but it's flowing with the kick. One. So the open hat actually happens on the one beat as well. Another cool thing about this is the turnaround section flows as one. Again, interdependence principle. So the claps are flowing with what the bass is doing, which is very cool. The other thing I wanted to mention about this percussive section is that in the bridge breakdown section, it goes from being real hi-hats to more of like a hip-hop trap electronic sounding hi-hats. Have a listen. Like it's got that more electronic feel. Even those toms. And then it goes back to the more organic section. So they've actually used a mixture of organic with electronic, and that breakdown section is a lot more electronic if you think about it, the whole vibe of it. Just because you use organic instruments at the start or mostly throughout, it doesn't mean that you can't bring more of that electronic vibe into it if you feel like it. Like you can actually substitute electronic instruments with organic instruments when needed for the different feels that you actually want. So the same principle applies with percussion as it does with the bass. Like they used a different bass for the different feel that they wanted for the pre-chorus, and then for this section they've used, in the bridge, they've used different percussion for the different feel they want. All right, let's talk about the vocals, because the vocals play one of the biggest roles in this track. In fact, the song itself is basically a call and response between the lead vocalist and the background vocalist. And it's a very hard type of song to write if you really think about it. Like to be able to write this song alone would be very hard. Let's start with the background vocals. So we already covered this one. This is the doo-wop kind of sound that doubles the core harmonic rhythmic driver.
Put your pinky rings up to the moon.
So these pack vocals really double the lead vocal, but they're like pack. It's like a pack of people, so it makes it sound more strong. So if I play it with the lead vocal.
Put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do?
So they're emphasizing the main lines of the track.
24 karat magic in the air. Head to toe, so player.
So right there was a harmony that went lower with the lead, and then this one was a response to the call.
Head to toe, so player.
So it's just a pack, like a pack of people singing that line.
Showtime, showtime. Guess who's back again? Go on, tell him. Go on, tell him. Show enough. Yeah, yeah. Whoop, whoop. Known to give the color red the blues.
So these are very like Uptown Funk style, which this was made just after Uptown Funk. So it's a very similar kind of style with that call and response. Like listen to the lead vocal with it.
Pop, pop, it's showtime. Showtime, showtime, showtime. Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know. Go on, tell 'em. Oh, they don't know. Go on, tell 'em. I bet they know as soon as we walk in. Shut up. I'm wearing Cuban link.
Can you notice how like sometimes they're doing call and response, other times they're actually connecting with the lead? They would have just been experimenting with this, like, oh, what could we say in response to this? Maybe we should fuse them together.
Yeah. Designer mix. Yeah. Inglewood's finest shoes. Whoop, whoop. Don't look too hard, might hurt yourself. Known to give the color red the blue.
And this is similar to the Pharrell mindset that we actually looked at the other week, where the way that he thinks about vocals sometimes, vocal arrangement, is that what could he put in between the spaces of vocal phrases? And that's exactly what they've done here. But they've actually took it that step further and made the song itself a call and response.
Pop, pop, it's showtime. Showtime, showtime, showtime. Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know. Go on, tell 'em. Oh, they don't know. Go on, tell 'em. I bet they know as soon as we walk in. I'm wearing Cuban links. Yeah. Designer mix.
Without the call and response, it doesn't sound as effective, but with it.
Yeah. Inglewood's finest shoes. Whoop, whoop. Don't look too hard, might hurt yourself. Known to give the color red the blues.
And that sound as well has become very distinctive to Bruno Mars, like that packed vocal sound, because not everyone does that these days. And the packed vocals, we can really, if we actually analyze Marvin Gaye the other week as well, and he used packed vocals as well to really give emphasis to the sound. So it's a very effective move to do if you have access to a pack of people. And a lot of this stuff takes place on a single line as well, but it's just because of the pack effect makes it sound more impactful. Other background vocals they have are like harmonies for the key moments, as shown here.
Oh, carrot magic in the air. Woo! 24 karat magic. What's that sound? 24 karat magic.
Again, packed vocals on single lines.
Come on now. 24 karat magic. Don't fight the feeling, invite the feeling. Just put your pinky rings up to the moon.
Now this vocal is really cool. It's called a hype vocal. It really just Bruno Mars in the background doing very creative vocal effects. But have a listen to where it happens though. That's the key thing. Where this happens, where this takes place. So this is the first one, and that happens in between a vocal phrase, I believe. So this is the lead.
Showtime. Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know.
Guess who's back again? Like that. And that carries over with a vocal throw. So they've got delay, reverb, so it carries over. With the background vocals, it sounds like this.
Showtime, showtime, showtime. Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know. Go on, tell 'em.
Boom, straight in the middle of phrases. So it's similar to the Pharrell mindset. Like, where can you place these kind of background vocals that are kind of in the background, but they fill out space.
To the moon.
Again.
What y'all trying to do?
A woo vocal. And here they've got a very similar thing to Uptown Funk. So have a listen to this. At the start of Uptown Funk, they've got a vocal that's very similar to that. And basically what it is Bruno Mars doing that sound, but it's very distorted. And it happens just before the final chorus for that extra impact.
What y'all trying to do?
Now, what I love about this vocal is that it's double in the lead vocal, but he's doing it in a way where it's more spoken, more of like, it's more of a spoken flow. So have a listen to it with the lead.
The moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do?
It just adds that extra punch.
24 karat magic in the air. Get up, get up, get up, get up, get up.
Vocal throw carries over.
Put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girl.
So he's doubling the lead vocal, but it's in a way where it's more spoken, more of like, more live sounding. And that's for the finale, really. He leaves that for the finale vocal, so it's a bit more intense. So the last vocals I want to look at is the Vox effects that happen in the pre-chorus. Now these are actually more of offbeat vocals. Have a listen. happening on the offbeat gives it a bit of bounce. And that only happens in the pre-chorus. Now, last vocals to look at are really the talk box vocals, and these are very distinctive to this track, very unique sounding to this track, and I actually don't know how they would have made these, but they sound like this. This is the intro. It's a combination of like harmonies, like 3 or 4 part harmony, and doing like more solo style vocals.
Put your pinky rings up to the moon.
But it's a very distinctive element of this track, almost like a featured instrument. The other way that they use it, other than a featured instrument, is to double the lead vocal on key moments, either in harmonies or doubling. So they're actually harmonizing with the lead vocal there. And that happens every time the punchline of the song happens. So reserving the punchline for a key moment and doubling the punchline with particular elements, as we've seen already with multiple elements.
Go, they be like, so player. Everywhere I go, they be like, so player.
So now they're using it more of a call and response element. So in this section, the breakdown section, they're doubling the background vocals with this.
24 karat. 24 karat, 24 karat magic.
The talk box is staying the same for the finale. But what I think is really cool is that there's an ad-lib section that Bruno Mars is singing. So here is Bruno Mars's ad-libs.
Put your pinky rings up to the moon. Hey girls, what y'all trying to do? Don't carry magic in the air.
I'll quickly note that the talk box is actually playing the exact same ad-libs as Bruno Mars. I'm pretty sure they've just grabbed his vocal and put it through this talk box sound. Because have a listen to this.
The moon.
It's the same line.
Tell me what you're trying to do.
But it's got that effect on it. So they've doubled the ad-libs with that sound. But then at the very end, they've actually used it as a featured instrument again, where it starts solo over the top for the finale for intensity. Because as we know, when it comes to energy development, when it comes to the finale, ways that you can build the energy is either adding higher octave instruments, adding counter rhythms, or adding extra layers on top of the same elements with different textures. So those are the different ways you can sort of add energy in finale sections, and they've used all of them in this song. The ad-libs, you really want to take notice of when they take place.
Players only, come on, put your pinky rings up to the moon.
Like right there, doubling the lead vocal, but kind of doing it in a different way.
Hey girls, what y'all
In between vocal phrases there. In between vocal phrase.
24 karat
But more of a call and response.
magic in the air.
On a sustained note, doubling the sustained note, but doing your own version, higher up.
Get down like
Now that they did something special with that right there. They did effects to make it sort of go down, as he says, break it down like, because it's obviously flowing with the lyrics.
break it down like
Congruency with the lyrics.
girls, what y'all trying to do? Tell me what you're trying to do. 24 karat
In between.
magic in the air.
Held note, do your own thing on top. There's a lot of patterns that like showing here with ad-libs. Like in this case, ad-libs are working best in between the vocal, and whenever there's a sustained note, doubling the sustained note, but doing it in your own way. So as you can notice, the vocal parts are actually the most complicated parts in this track. Like if you really think about it, all the instrumental is made up of is like a kick, snare, clap, some hi-hats, and like some crashes, things like that. Very simple. And even the instrumental, like you've got a bass, you've got one bass, you've got a guitar, some synth effects that happen just before the choruses, and then you've got like the main synth stab and a sustained like pad, and also the little arpeggio things at the top, and that's basically it. So it's actually a very simple arrangement, but it's the way they've used it, it's the way they've used each individual one that makes it work so well, and the way that they float it all together as one interdependent entity. The really complicated parts really come in on the vocals. So the strategic choices of vocal placements, when the background vocal should sing, whether that's with the lead vocal, whether that's in call and response with the lead vocal. The vocals are actually the most complicated part about this, and the way that they've used them is very genius. It's very similar to the Pharrell mindset, where they're using vocals to fill out space, where there's silence, and doing that in a way that's actually strategic and effective. So yeah, if you want to learn how to cross-pollinate genres, I feel like that Bruno Mars is a great example of someone who can do that very well. So it's definitely someone to draw upon. But if you want to actually learn how to cross-pollinate influences yourself, and do that by reading songs like a book, understanding the Lego building blocks of tracks so that you can combine genres together like Bruno Mars does, Polymath Producer System, polymathproducer.com. Go check it out. As you can see, my light is about to run out of battery. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.